Some of you viewing this may wonder why I walked away from a job I loved and had been doing for 10 years. This video will shed some light into the reasons why I walked away and why I now feel compelled to do this tell-all video. For those of you who may not watch the board meeting videos on the website, what follows is an example of only one of the many times in which I have been discussed in less than favorable light since my resignation over 3 years ago. What follows is a statement that I tried to read to the board at the January 8th meeting. If you watch the board meeting video, you'll see they wouldn't allow me to do so. I'm doing so now. I listened to the audio of the last meeting and I read the article in the newspaper, and I wanted to say that the way that some of the board members responded to the roll call was both racist and very unprofessional, and I hope that this will be addressed. I also wanted to say something about the section where the board was discussing various ways in which to handle disciplinary matters. Ms. Edmonds stated that she wanted to be told what to do because she didn't want to be in any decision-making capacity. Ms. Dow then made the following comment. She said, and I quote, "Well, we had a prior employee in that position who took it upon herself. She basically just didn't tell me of anything. She would just go and do it, and that's one of the reasons I ended up with it. Because, well, it's a long story and we won't go into that." I'd like to say that this is not a factual statement. When I first started working for the board, I brought every alleged infraction before the board for their determination. At some point, the board decided that routine advertising violations need not be brought before them unless it was a third offense. I don't remember if Ms. Dow was the attorney at the time, but if she was, she would have been fully aware of this, as Ms. Steinkamp should also have been fully aware of this. I can only assume that this decision was made because the board was growing tired of having to deal with continued routine ad violations, and that they would also realize a savings in legal fees by my sending them out instead of Ms. Dow. So for Ms. Dow to say that I just took it upon myself is quite false. And for her to say that I never told her anything is also not factual, as we had literally thousands of conversations regarding licensee activity, whether it was regarding advertising or some other infraction that I had become aware of. And it's much more accurate to say that upon becoming aware of some alleged illegal activity, she was notified and she was consulted as to what the next steps should be. And it was she who told me what language to put into the 961 letters that I sent out. Had I known then that I would need to document such conversations in order to defend my character now, I would certainly have done so. Bad enough I've been trashed by the board members. Now it seems the attorney is doing so as well. Really, Anna? You know full well I had the board's blessing to do ad violations. That is, until I caught some board members doing some things they shouldn't have been doing. As for other matters relating to investigations, I would remind this board and Ms. Dow that the board employed 2 different investigators during my employment. Both Mr. Sherrie and then later Mr. Steele were the investigators for the board, and anything that I may have done to assist them in their investigations was done at their request and with the full knowledge of either the chairman or Ms. Dow or both. And this was the case until I happened to catch certain people doing things they weren't supposed to be doing, and I reported them for it. Let me tell you further that for the first 9 years of my employment, I did exactly what the chairman, the board, and Ms. Dow instructed me to do, as long as it was ethical and legal. Let me also tell you that I was evaluated regularly by the chairman on 11 different criteria, and the scores on my evaluations were always in the rating category of exceeds requirements. It was only after I caught this same chairman and another board member with their hands in the proverbial cookie jar, and I reported them, that I was suddenly branded an awful employee who overstepped her authority, was power hungry, and who wanted to fund her raises by fining auctioneers. It would take hours to tell you the hell I was put through my last year there. Suffice it to say that the very person that was turned in and was subsequently removed from power then went on a systematic vendetta to try to destroy my reputation and to get me fired. Untruthful things were told to new board members about me. Untruthful things were said at conventions about me. My words and my actions were twisted. Unsuspecting licensees were used to further his agenda. And at least one new board member was manipulated and used to make it appear that I had overstepped my authority. Petitions asking for me to be fired were passed around the good old boy network. And through this and more, the new chairman did nothing except jump on the bandwagon himself. And now, once again, I find I am being discussed in a manner that is less than truthful, and once again, I'm being made to look like a power-hungry person who's overstepped her authority. And to this I say, and let me be perfectly clear, do not discuss me in any way. I am done with being trashed by people that know nothing about me as a person. Let me tell you something that you should know. I got 2 board members stealing LALB money, and I did the right thing and I reported them. Despite what I was told to do, I reported it. As a result, I was dragged through the mud. I was made to look like a terrible person. And some people sat by silently and watched it happen. My honesty and willingness to do the right thing cost me my job in the long run. It got to a point it was no longer worth the $16 an hour they were paying me to be put through the crap that I was being put through. So I resigned. If I had it to do over again, I'd report them again in a heartbeat. It was the right thing to do. So you people need to take what's been said about me with a pound of salt. Not a grain, a pound. It seems to me that you're listening to people who want to manipulate the truth and who tear me down in order to make themselves look good. I strongly suggest that you stop talking about people behind their backs, and yet doing so in such a public forum. It may come back to bite you if you don't. That concludes the statement that I was going to make to the board, but was not allowed to make. Now, before I close, I'd like to take a few additional minutes, clarify a point in the statement that I just read, and also make some observations regarding the board's behavior and their public comment period. Now, I'm sure that some of you are wondering just exactly what I was referring to when I said I caught board members stealing LALB money. I won't go into the specifics, but suffice it to say that if a person takes money that they're not legally entitled to receive, or a person gives money to someone who isn't legally entitled to receive that money, that's stealing. All members of a public body are held responsible for the paperwork that they submit regarding the disbursement of funds. As for my observations, I've got 2. The first is that the board seems to feel free to act in any way they choose, to say anything they choose, in any manner they choose, and about anyone that they choose. And they also seem to believe they can do so without any repercussions, without any admonishments, and without any backlash. And let me add, the public is apparently not allowed to comment on that behavior. My second observation is that their public comment period is flawed, and it's been twisted to their advantage. It's set up in such a way that one isn't allowed to comment on anything that happened at a previous meeting. And let me add that even though there's an item on the agenda that says approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, the public doesn't get to see those minutes. And the public's not allowed to comment on anything that happened on a previous meeting. The comment period's the first thing on the agenda. The current meeting has yet to occur. And sometimes the agenda is so generic, it's impossible to know exactly what's going to be discussed until they start discussing it. But by the time they start discussing it, the comment period is over. Simply put, The law states there must be a public comment period before votes taken. But the public comment period comes before any discussions, before any motions that the board may make. So how can the public weigh in? It'd be better if the board took each agenda item, made any motions they wanted to make, opened up the discussion, held the public comment period on that item, and then voted on that item. And yes, it would take a little longer to do things that way, but at least if they did it that way, the intent of the law would be being served. My name is Sherrie Wilks, former executive assistant for the Louisiana Auctioneers Licensing Board, and this was my public comment.